Namaskar and welcome to StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigaonker. The agenda for today's discussion is to understand the changes made to the Biological Diversity Act 2002 by the Parliament. You already know that the Parliament's monsoon session is in progress. Many bills have been passed. In our previous discussion, we had understood the amendments made to the Cinematograph Act 1952. Today, we are going to understand what are the amendments made to the Biological Diversity Act 2002. You can see here, Parliament passes the Biological Diversity Bill 2023. I'm using the year 2023 because it was passed recently. Although the bill was introduced in 2021, later on it was referred to a standing committee. When I say Parliament, that means both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha have passed this bill. Once the president assents, it becomes the act. The changes would be incorporated and then it will enter the official gazette. So what would be the agenda today? We are first going to understand the original act, the Biological Diversity Act 2002. Its provisions would be understood so that we get a comparative analysis, or we do a comparative analysis of original act and the changes now. The changes would be understood in a very sound manner if we understand the original bill. And at the end of the discussion, we are going to do some sort of critical analysis or what improvement can be made further in this act. That would be the complete domain of our discussion. Without any delay, let us begin. But before that, there is a small notice for all the UPSC civil services aspirants. StudyIQ is offering P2I Prelims to Interview program for August. This would be one of the last batches available for 2024. It is offered in three formats: English, Hindi, and in a bilingual format, English. Here, we would be guiding you through prelims, through mains, and through interview. It's the most comprehensive program which has been designed at a very affordable price. StudyIQ's motto is affordable education for all. If you want maximum discount, do use my code Rahul Live whenever you check out. Just visit our website, studyiq.com. All right, let's begin our discussion. As I told you, our discussion is connected to biodiversity, biological diversity, or in short, biodiversity. I told you recently Parliament has amended the original act. You can see here Rajya Sabha passes. Before that, Lok Sabha had also passed the amendment bill. Then Rajya Sabha also passed it in the August first week. And once the president assents it, it becomes an act and then it enters the official gazette. You do know that. Now, let's first talk about what is this Biological Diversity Act, when was it brought, and why was it brought? The Biological Diversity Act was passed in 2002 by the Indian Parliament. The intention, we do know, is to conserve biodiversity. We do understand that biodiversity is extremely important. Since, I would say, 1960s, 17, there has been a lot of focus on environment. The problems of pollution, the problems of global warming, climate change, they came to fore and countries started to come together, acknowledging the problems of pollution and global warming. And it not only affected humans, but it affected in general the biosphere. That means the forest, the wildlife, every living organism. And biodiversity is extremely important for survival of everyone, not just humans. That is why it is said, if one species gets extinct, then we are moving towards our own extinction. And that's why it becomes imperative that we conserve that biological diversity. And for that, Indian Parliament brought an act in 2002. It came in force next year, that is February 2003, it came into force. Now, why did we bring it? Of course, I told you there was a lot of awareness at the global level itself. Initially, in 1972, there was first convention, Stockholm Convention, which eventually led to the Wildlife Protection Act. In 1992, the Earth Summit came up, the Rio Summit came. And in the Rio Summit, it resulted in some important conventions. One of the convention was UNFCCC, United Nations Framework to Combat the Climate Change. Another convention also came, which was the Convention on Biological Diversity. It was passed. It came through the Rio Summit itself. One of the results in 1993, it was finalized by all the international players. They acknowledged that conserving biodiversity is very important, not just for one country, but for the entire world. Whoever acceded to this Convention of Biological Diversity, they were now supposed to bring appropriate legal, administrative, and other provisions responsible for protecting the biodiversity, for protecting the genetic resources, and also to use these genetic and biodiversity based resources sustainably. And that is why almost after 10 years, I would say, we brought this legal mechanism, that is the Biological Diversity Act. And its objectives are what? Its objectives are, first one, of course, conservation of biological diversity, one. Number two is sustainable use of resources. It's not like we are completely abolishing or banning the use of biodiversity based resources or genetic resources from forest, etc. What we want is sustainable use of that, and ultimately what we want is fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of it. All right, these are the three intentions. Remember this from MCQ perspective. I can simply create an MCQ asking what are the objectives of Biological Diversity Act 2002: conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use of biodiversity based resources, and fair and equitable sharing of benefits among all. After the Convention on Biodiversity 1993 it came, we also brought certain protocols. Protocols are the pledged commitments by the countries. In 2003, one of the protocols to CBD was the Cartagena Protocol, although that is not under the domain of this discussion, but I'll just tell you about the Cartagena Protocol of 2003. It relates to the transport or the export and import of biological resources. Say, for example, if I'm transferring some genetically modified organism from one country to another country, then there has to be complete informed consent, right? The prior informed consent, the mutually agreed terms, all these things have to be cleared. For that, one protocol had come, just for your information. But for today's discussion, the second protocol which came to the CBD, that is the Nagoya Protocol, it becomes very important. The Nagoya Protocol to the Convention on Biodiversity, it came in 2010. Nagoya is a city in Japan. It comes in Aichi Prefecture. Here, the international players or different nations, they came together to finalize a protocol basically to ensure that there would be access to genetic resources, there would be access to biodiversity based resources for each other. The benefits that would be coming out from it, they would be shared among each other, and there would be compliance of the local rules and regulations. That means compliance both at the global level. The CBD Secretariat has certain rules and regulations. Every nation has to comply, or those nations who have acceded to the protocol, they have to comply, and the nations have to comply even with the local rules and regulations. Now, this is a small acronym for you to remember: ABC, access to the genetic resources, access to the biological diversity based resources, benefit sharing, fair and equitable benefit sharing, and compliance. All right. Now, why I'm telling this? Because whenever I discuss biodiversity, I always tell a story. To understand biodiversity in a better way, or to understand this convention and Nagoya Protocol in a better way. Now, what I tell is, imagine there is a foreigner. Say, imagine a person from United States of America has come to India, and he is camping, or he's on a trip to Himalayas. All right, he's visiting the Great Himalayas in the northern Indian states. All right, so he is down with fever. After he reaches Himalayas, he's down with fever. He's got fever, he has got body pain, and there is no doctor available, right? It's a mountain place. So he finds a sage. He finds an Indian sage or an Indian guru. And he tells the guru that, Guruji, I am basically suffering from fever and I have a lot of body pain. So what the Guruji does, what the sage does, he takes some leaves from one particular plant, which is Indian traditional biodiversity based resource, some leaves from that particular plant. What that sage does is, that sage simply crushes those leaves, he makes some juice out of it, and he gives it to that foreigner. And that foreigner, he consumes it, and he sees that he's now fit and fine. His fever, his body pain is gone. And he says, Sage or Guruji, what is this? I want to carry this with me. The sage, he gives some sample or some leaves to him, and the person, he carries it to, say, United States of America. He conducts some research on it, and he realizes that this particular plant has some chemicals which behave as analgesic and antipyretic, and he files a patent for that. He reserves something for that. He starts medicine based on that, and he earns billions of dollars. I hope you get the problem here. What is the problem? Is there was traditional knowledge of that particular biodiversity based resource for that sage. He shared that with someone. The other person used it. He filed a patent somewhere else, and now he's printing billions of dollars. And was that benefit shared equitably with the other person? or equitably with the other country? No. I hope you do understand the meaning or what is the use of this. All right, because we want, of course, we want that to be shared with the world, but fair and equitable use of these genetic resources have to be performed, right? Now, let me come back to the discussion after the story. Right? I told you we brought the Biological Diversity Act 2002. Now, what it did, it set up some structural and operational framework. It defined biological diversity, it defined the offenses, defined all the things. It also spoke about access and benefit sharing. It created a procedure. It also provided duties for the state government and the central government. It created an institutional framework. At the central level, there was NBA, National Biodiversity Authority. At the state level, state biodiversity boards came up, and at the district level, at the local level, BMC, the biodiversity management committees came up. It also defined the decision-making bodies. There is NBA, there is SBB. If there has to be some appeal, initially, the decisions taken by NBA and SBB, they were appealed directly to the High Court. But in 2010, the NGT came, National Green Tribunal came, and appeals of this would lie with NGT, then to the High Court. It also defined certain offenses, the nature of offenses, and remember, penal provisions, fine and imprisonment. I am highlighting this imprisonment because it is very important to understand the changes as well. So what it did, it set up or it defined the laws. It set up institutional framework where central government body is the NBA. Remember, NBA is autonomous body. NBA is statutory body. NBA comes under MOEF-CC, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Its basic job is to behave as an apex body or the approval body connected to anything related to biodiversity in India. For instance, if any other country wants to deal with India in terms of biodiversity, the apex authority would be NBA, National Biodiversity Authority. What is its job? Its job is to provide approvals to access of biological resources and knowledge, transfer of those research results, intellectual property related based decision, and other measures which help India in terms of using biodiversity based resources. Then the second level is the state biodiversity boards. Different states have created their own respective state biodiversity boards, and within their jurisdiction they regulate and they facilitate the biodiversity based initiatives. At the local level, there is biodiversity management committees, and their responsibility basically is to conserve biodiversity, because people participation is extremely important for biodiversity conservation. And one of the clauses under the BMC, biodiversity management committees, is to ensure that we create people's biodiversity register. People's biodiversity registers, meaning, say if I am in one particular district, if I am in one particular area, now this BMC would come and say, they survey, they ask, are there any biological diversity resources here? So I give them inputs and a people's biodiversity register is created. All right, why I'm telling this, you'll understand in some time. So this is the law. Apart from that, there are some other provisions. One of the ideas is sustainably use the biodiversity. It is mentioned in section 7. If you use biodiversity based resources in India, ensure that there is no pollution out of it. There is also benefit sharing clause in section 21. There is no need to mug up sections, but why I am telling this is the benefit has to be shared. Do you remember or recall the story that I told you just a few minutes back? Benefit has to be shared. What kind of benefit? It can be monetary benefit, it can be intellectual property right sharing, or it can also be some sort of technology transfer. All right, so benefit sharing clauses are provided in section 21, in section 24. Apart from that, intellectual property rights and their approval, their regulation has been provided in different sections, section 29. And the Act 2002, it defines certain offenses and penalties for it, meaning if any person, any company, any individual, any research entity, they violate the provisions of Biodiversity Act, then they can be subjected to fines under section 55 and imprisonment. I'm repeating, and imprisonment. Clear? So this is the basic idea of Biological Diversity Act, original one, 2002. Now, what are the changes that have been brought? I told you the bill has been passed first by the Lok Sabha, then by the Rajya Sabha. Again, this is 2021 bill because it was introduced in Lok Sabha in 2021. Later on, it was subjected to the scrutiny of Joint Parliamentary Committee. They submitted the report in 2002, and finally it came up in the monsoon session now, which has been passed. All right. Now the question is, so why these people have brought these changes? Prima facie, when I discussed or when you told me about this particular act, things look fine, but why? Why changes have been brought? Changes have been brought, first of all, to encourage Indian system of medicine. You do know there is a lot of focus right on Ayush, Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, homeopathy, etc. So these practitioners, people who are Ayush professionals, they get their things done very easily, so that if they are filing some sort of IPR or research paper, it would be done very quickly. Along with it, if some foreign entity wants to perform some research or they want to conduct some sort of bio survey, very easily they can get compliance requirements, fast tracking of approvals, etc. Foreign investment can come if the foreign companies are able to bio survey, if they are able to get the clearances quickly, then investment would come in future. Apart from that, the bill also includes a reference to Nagoya Protocol. The original bill, it did not have it. Of course, the bill came in, or the act came in 2002. The Nagoya Protocol, it came in 2010. So these are the basic changes that have been done, or the reasons for which changes have been done. Now, so what is different now? What is different? See, approvals which the NBA was supposed to give in the original act, there were some entities which were defined, and these entities were a foreign, it can be a foreign individual, it can be NRI, it can be companies not registered in India, and it can be company registered in India having non-Indian participation. Now this entities has been amended, and a new change has been brought where they have added now foreign controlled companies registered under the Companies Act, they can also apply to NBA to access the genetic resources or biodiversity based resources from India, and approval would be provided to them. Apart from that, prior intimation has to be provided to the state biodiversity board. This is specially for the domestic countries. Now you need to understand that NBA, it gives approval to domestic as well as foreign companies, foreign individuals, but SBB is for domestic entities, certain domestic entities, and here exemptions have been increased. If you look at the exemptions are now provided for accessing codified traditional knowledge. This is very, very important, codified traditional knowledge. Apart from that, now exemption is also provided for Ayush practitioners to access this. That means the Ayush practitioner can access those genetic resources, can take benefit out of it, conduct research, and there is no need to share those benefits with local people or with the local community. Do you get it? That's the basic idea. These are the changes that have been brought. Now you think, okay, sir, it is fine. That means foreign companies will come, they will invest. Ayush research is going to happen quickly. It is very nice. Okay. Apart from that, some other change has come with respect to intellectual property rights. The NBA is going to approve, National Biodiversity Authority, if it is a foreign entity which is applying for IPR, right from the first point itself, they have to get approval from NBA. But for domestic entities, they have to register themselves with NBA, provided they are looking for commercial utilization of these resources, of Indian resources. Clear? Right. Apart from this, benefit sharing. Now this is very important. There have been some changes in the benefit sharing clauses. Now with respect to benefit sharing, the NBA is now required, the National Biodiversity Authority, it is now required to determine the terms. Meaning, say I am a foreign entity, I want to use some domestic genetic resource from India, so I will use that. I'll also share benefits. Now, how those benefits would be shared, those terms and conditions would be finalized between the foreign company and the NBA, National Biodiversity Authority. All right. Yes, the NBA will ask the biodiversity management committees, but the final decision, it will lie with NBA, and the benefit sharing can be monetary or non-monetary, whatever they decide. Clear? Now there have been some exemptions also here. Exemptions are provided for research, biosurvey, and bioutilization. They need not share benefits with the locals. If it is there for everybody, for foreign researchers, for Indian researchers as well. Apart from this, one of the most contentious changes that has come is with respect to offenses and penalties. Remember, right now the biodiversity based offenses, they have been decriminalized. They have been decriminalized. Meaning, earlier under the original act, offences included failing to take approval or giving or asking for prior intimation from the SBB, and it led to imprisonment of up to 5 years or a fine, or both also, But now there is no imprisonment. Remember, no imprisonment. That means I would say no arrest, no imprisonment. This is one of the changes. It has been decriminalized. It doesn't mean there is no fine. Right now, there would be a penalty, and now hefty penalty would be awarded. Hefty penalty up to the tune of 1 lakh to 50 lakh, and in some cases, it can go even up to 1 crore. Now, the question is, sir, who will decide this penalty? Will it be 50 lakh, 5 lakh, or say 1 crore in exceptional cases? Who will decide? Remember, it is going to be decided by the joint secretary of the central government or the rank of secretary of state government. They will hold an inquiry and then they will award penalty. So basically, these are the changes that have been made. Biodiversity based offenses, they have been decriminalized. And many environmental experts criticize this. So if we do a critical analysis, by now I think you must have understood some of the issues which I specifically highlighted in red. If you have observed it, what are the problems? The first problem is this codified traditional knowledge, which has been now added in the exempt list, where no prior intimation is needed to be asked from the state biodiversity board. The question is, sir, what is the meaning of this codified traditional knowledge? What is it? Is there anything that the government maintains, the state government maintains, central government maintains? Yes, you told me about the biodiversity management committees, where you have the people's biodiversity register, right? There is a people's BD register, biodiversity register. So is it this codified traditional knowledge? It has not been defined. There have been many surveys which have been conducted by different NGOs, where they asked state government representatives, their respective MOEF, right, Ministry of Environment Forest, and not many state governments, they have this data of biodiversity resources that are present in their own state. This is a problem, right? So this has to be defined. The next thing is benefit sharing agreement. Now it would be between NBA and the subsequent party, whatever party is there, foreign entity or any entity. It would be between NBA and the claimers, NBA and the other party involved. And remember, the final decision is with National Biodiversity Authority. Of course, they will take inputs from the local people, but the local people or the final claimers, they are not involved in deciding the terms and conditions of these agreements. That's another issue. There's one more issue with respect to decriminalization of offenses. Again, if you argue with me that, sir, offenses are decriminalized, it is very fine because it is going to promote R&D in India. Yes, okay, I would agree with that. Sir, it is going to bring foreign research into India. It is going to improve FDI in India. I would agree with that also. But there is one problem. I wouldn't agree with the deciding authority for sure. Why? Because now the deciding authority is a bureaucrat. It is a joint secretary or the secretary at the state level. And they are now getting a power to decide the penalty. Will the penalty be 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakh, 50 lakh? They have the power now. They will conduct an inquiry and they will decide the penalty. So I hope you do understand why there is a problem, right? To all the future bureaucrats, why it would be a problem? I would say it is much better if it is passed on from the bureaucrats to a judge, probably to say NGT or any other authority. All right? Because yes, there are always chances of abuse of power or misuse of power, because we do know there are a lot of problems of abuse, misuse, corruption problems. There would be a lot of arbitrary discretion would be available, which would be available with the bureaucrats. Apart from that, the foreign controlled company under the Companies Act and some other provisions, they conflict, right? There is foreign individual, foreign companies, different categories of companies have been defined. Along with it, remember, research, biosurvey and bioutilization activities, they are not going to share their benefits with the locals. Now this clause can be amended or it can be improved. It can be improved that benefits arising out of that research or some share can be done, or now it can be used as a loophole, because this has been simply mentioned, but there have been no guidelines for it. Say for instance, if a big pharmaceutical company is funding a research, then I think there has to be some sort of sharing with the people, right? That has to happen. So this can be used as a loophole to deny the local people, the genuine claimers, from those benefits. All right. So I hope you have understood the changes or understood the amendments clearly. Also, how the amendments could have been better as well. Questions can appear on these. What are the changes that have been brought? How the government wants to promote biodiversity? How the government wants to promote Ayush, Ayurveda? This can be a very good example to you to quote that government has amended this bill to promote Ayush, promote Ayurveda in India. All right. If there is any update on this, we'll discuss that again on StudyIQ. But that is the end of our discussion. Thank you for watching this. And if you like this video, then you can always follow me on my social media handle @Rahul Sai 222. Thank you again. Jai Hind.